Hello and welcome to Fur, Fins, and Feathers. Believe it or not, but this is our 33rd broadcast, and we have grown a rather large audience, extending into many, many communities. Today we welcome Dave Marchetti of East Providence, and tell us about your wonderful programs that you have.
Well, the name of my business is Animal Experiences. I've been doing it, actually started as a part-time thing or occasional thing back in the 80s, but I've been doing it pretty much full-time since 1997, and visit schools and libraries and camps. Birthday parties are a big part of the business, so I mean, I'm all over the place.
So you have fun almost every week.
You know, if I'm going to work, I might as well enjoy what I'm doing.
How did you start with animals?
I actually managed a very large pet store for quite a few years, and I would occasionally have groups come into the store, and I was the guy who gave them the tour of the store, and occasionally I'd have teachers come in with groups and say, do you ever go out and do, shows outside of the store? And at that time I did not. But then at one point I was asked by a lovely lady who worked at the Providence Children's Museum if I would come and do a program at the museum. So I actually took animals from the store, went and did programs for her on a number of occasions. And she kind of planted the seed and said, I was a natural, said I really should be doing more of that. And it kind of grew from there.
And it's always enjoyable and fun. You've been at the Swansea Public Library a couple of times.
Yes,
We've
I have, yeah.
enjoyed wonderful programs. And I got to meet you in Dighton.
Yeah, the Arts Festival, I was amazed how big it was to begin with, but
And it's really grown.
non-stop action. I mean, the whole time I'm there, it just doesn't stop.
You are an author. I know you didn't bring any books, but tell us about your books.
Well, I had the urge some years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, to write a book. As a kid, I used to catch little fish called sticklebacks. And there's a stream right near where I live where you can catch them. And they're fascinating fish, so I ended up writing a book about sticklebacks called Steve the Stickleback. And I enjoyed doing that, and I had some teachers say they thought it was a lovely book, really enjoyed it. So then I wrote a book about a snake. I had a snake once that got loose in the house, and ended up writing a story about what I imagined him thinking as he went through the house. And then later I wrote a book about a tree frog. So I've written 3 so far.
And where are they available?
Available online, I think.
Are they on Amazon?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what have you brought today?
Well, I brought a few of my more popular guys. When I do a show, I typically bring about 20 animals to a show. But today I brought a bearded dragon. This is a young one. This guy could get much, much bigger. He's probably about 9 months old. And they're very cool.
Now, was he bred in captivity or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I have, I believe that was not bred in captivity, are my 2 older box turtles that I brought today. But this guy, yeah.
So tell me about the bearded dragon.
I actually think there's a lot of lizards available for pets. I actually think they're the very best pet lizards. Once they're used to people, they get to be very, very tame and calm. Given a big cage, they'll grow quite large, but in a smaller cage, it does limit their size to some degree, which is pretty much common with most cold-blooded animals. But in an aquarium, say a 30-gallon aquarium, he'll grow probably 15, 16 inches total length.
Is he a friendly character?
They're very good. They're very good, yeah. Now, you can hold him if you like.
Oops. Hi there. What's his name?
His name is Scales.
Hello, Scales.
And he's native to Australia, although, again, you're not likely to find wild-caught bearded dragons available in stores. They're all captive-bred and have been for years. But they come in a lot of different colors that are not native to the wild. They've actually, as they've done with many pets, through selective breeding, they've got different colors and things. So you get some that have more yellow, some that got more orange.
Hello there, Scales.
You know, they're easy to keep. It's usually very, very tame. They're rugged enough where kids can handle them. You don't worry about them. So they're nice pets.
With the holidays coming up, would this be an example of a good pet? Family
Well,
pet?
I'm always a little leery of pets as Christmas gifts unless it's the parents doing it. I don't suggest other members of the family unless they've discussed it with the parents. Something like this, I'd say a child 10 and up could easily take care of it by themselves.
After the holidays, maybe.
Yep, it's you know, they're going to require some care, but I consider these guys quite low maintenance. So nice pets, and really fun to handle. And I mean, these guys, once they're used to people, you can just sit them on your shoulder. You could walk around for hours. He'll just still be on your shoulder. He's not going to go anywhere. So they're very cool.
How much, off the record, how much would a bearded dragon cost?
To buy
Are they very expensive?
No, I'd say a baby on average is maybe $60 to $70.
Okay, and
you know, and then when you get all the stuff you need, that's going to add some cost. You're probably going to end up with the lizard in a nice little setup for him, probably $175, something like that.
talk about veterinary care for these guys.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a lizard that's ever gone to the vet. They don't typically get sick. There are some vets that specialize in exotics in the area, but I've never had to bring a lizard to the vet. They don't require shots or anything like that. It's pretty easy to clip their nails, so there's not really much required by a vet.
Very good. So who else are we going to see today?
Well, I'll tell you, when I do shows with kids, snakes are the favorite. I typically bring about 7 or 8 snakes to every show because the kids love to handle them. It's funny, I'll find far more parents afraid of them than kids. But this is an albino milk snake. His name is Pixie Stick. He's 10 years old.
He's quite the character.
Well, he's a beautiful snake. Of course, he's an albino. This is a snake that would not survive in the wild. Typical milk snake, and this is an albino milk snake, typical milk snake would be black everywhere he is white. And then your normal milk snake looks like a poisonous coral snake. So they can survive in the wild despite not having camouflage. But this guy, no camouflage, doesn't frighten anybody with these colors, so he's not going to survive in the wild.
It's a beautiful snake.
Yeah. When I got him, he was the size of a pencil, which is the size most snakes are when people buy them. He's full grown, or he's not going to get any bigger.
Talk about his care.
There's even less care than the lizard. I call these a lazy man's pet. You feed them once a week. All my snakes eat dead rodents. I buy them frozen. And I do that because snakes that eat dead animals are much less likely to ever nip anyone. Most people that get nipped by pet snakes are feeding live animals. The animals associate movement with feeding, so sometimes they'll bite at people when they reach in the cage. But these guys, I mean, he's very happy in a 15 or 20 gallon aquarium. You know, doesn't need a ton of space. He's got actually just paper on the bottom of the cage. I have so many cages that I have to keep the maintenance to a minimum. If you had him as a pet, you know, and you only had 1 snake or 2 snakes, you'd probably have a thing on the bottom. They call them cage coppets. And then you'd have a hiding place for him to go in. Depending on the temperature of the room he's in, you might need a heat source of some sort. My guys, it's the warmest room in the house where I have all the animals, so except for a couple guys who really need high heat, most of them are at room temperature in there. So, you know, want to handle him?
He's cold.
When
Cold-blooded.
when the weather is cold, the snakes feel exceptionally cold. In the summer, I mean, you hold him on a 90-degree day, he doesn't feel very cold at all. Maybe a little cool, but not cold. But weather like this, yeah, they feel cold. And of course, he's sticking out his tongue. It's how he smells.
Does he get along with other animals?
You know, I don't mix. All my snakes are in individual cages. Milk snakes and my other favorite pet snake is a king snake. Both of those types of snakes will eat other snakes. So if you had the two snakes together and there was enough disparity in size and he was hungry, the bigger guy might eat the little guy. So my guys
separate them.
Mine are all in individual cages. Yeah.
I would assume that when you go to a show, he is a really he gets a lot of interest. He attracts a lot of interest.
He does. He's one of the favorites for sure. I have another albino milk snake. It's actually my oldest snake named Jellybean. Jellybean is well past what they consider a normal lifespan for snakes. So, but he's one of the favorites too. That's another orange snake.
Very interesting. And low maintenance.
You know, they eat once a week. This guy in the summertime might eat twice a week, but most of my snakes are once a week. The cleaning, I tend to soak my snakes. I put them in a basin of water. They'll drink when they're in there, and they often go to the bathroom when they're in there. So a lot of times the cage, I can clean the cage once a week. That's it. That's all I need to do. So it's very, very simple.
What about, do you get a lot of people, shouldn't say maybe a lot, but people relinquishing their pets and some of their exotics?
I've got a couple of animals that I've gotten from people, but personally that's not something I've encountered a lot.
Which is a good thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So what else do we have to,
I have
are we going to see?
my favorite kind of reptile, if I could only have one reptile, is a box turtle. So I brought a couple of box turtles. I've had these guys about 15 years. They're named Dora and Diego. And I tease the kids that they named the show after my turtles, but most of them don't buy that. So this is Diego, and this is Dora. These are called three-toed box turtles. They're not native box, they're not the box turtles that would live around here. Box turtles around here are called eastern box turtles. They're a bit bigger than these guys and much prettier. These guys, and I don't want to hurt their feelings, but they're kind of plain for box turtles. We know this is a girl because it's got brown eyes. The boys will have either orange or red eyes. So Diego's got orange eyes, Dora has brown eyes. And I love box turtles because they never get too big. I have never had a box turtle that would bite. They're super friendly. They're omnivores, so they both meat and plants, but most of their diet is fruits and vegetables.
And where are they indigenous to?
These guys would be out in the Midwest, maybe Missouri or someplace like that. And they're called three-toed box turtles because they actually have 3 toes on their back feet. As far as I know, most, if not all, of the box turtles have 4 toes on their back feet. And they're called box turtles because they can actually close their shell. They can go in the shell and close it, something other turtles can't do. So the bottom can close. And they can close the back as well, so both ends. Very cool turtles. And the funny thing is, I've had these guys 15 years. They were grown-ups when I got them. They're probably pretty close to 40 years old. And
what is their longevity?
I've read articles where they've had them over 100 years in a zoo. I'd say probably the norm for a box turtle is more like 50 or 60 years, something like that.
Very interesting.
Another very low maintenance pet. So they'll eat fruits and veggies. His favorite food without question is tomatoes. Absolutely loves tomatoes. He dives into the dish. But they'll eat bugs and worms as well. When they're in the wild, they're eating bugs. They're eating fruit that falls from trees. They're eating, if they find a dead animal, they'd probably eat a dead animal or pick at a dead animal as well. So very interesting animals.
Are they capable of breeding?
You know, I'm starting, I get lists every week because I've been in the business so long and I'm always buying new stuff. I get lists every week, and now I'm pretty regularly starting to see captive-bred box turtles available. They're quite expensive, but you don't see box turtles in pet stores very much anymore, just because they've prohibited the collection of them in most places. So.
And yet he's very popular when you bring him to shows.
Yeah, the kids love the box. Kids like anything that they can handle. And my shows are very, very hands-on. No one's going to find a more hands-on program than mine. And when the kids actually get to feel it and see what it's like in the hand and what it weighs, and to feel the nails. And a lot of kids are a little leery. They think the nails are going to hurt. But with the box turtles, the nails are quite dull, so they don't hurt when you feel them. So it's, and for me, I think it makes a much bigger impression on the kids to actually be feeling and holding the animals, not just reaching out and touching something with 2 fingers. Hold them.
Hello there. And his name is Diego.
That's Diego.
Hello there. What about his veterinary care? How do you handle
Well, again,
that?
that's another animal I've never had to bring to the vet because about the one thing they need occasionally is the nails trimmed and their beak here. In fact, his is getting to the point where I'm going to have to trim it pretty soon. It's not unusual for turtles in captivity for that part of their, what they call the beak, to get overgrown. And so some people would bring it to a vet and the vet would trim it. I know how to trim it, so I do it myself. But other than that, if you had a sick turtle, a lot of times actually a lot of the reptiles, if they're sick, they'll get injections of either vitamins if the problem's a vitamin deficiency, or they can get antibiotics. But I've been fortunate. I have very, very seldom had anything with a problem.
So what other types of animals do you bring to your shows?
Well, when I go to a show, it actually depends on where I'm going. If I'm in Rhode Island, I bring an alligator. I don't bring the alligator to Massachusetts or Connecticut.
Why is that?
Every state has different
Regulations and
permitting
rules?
requirements. So I've just never gone to the trouble to get a permit for the other states. But so I have an alligator. I have, as I said before, I'll bring 7 or 8 different snakes to a show. I'll bring, in addition to Dora and Diego, usually at least 3 or 4 turtles. I'll bring a bigger bearded dragon, another lizard called the blue-tongued skink. I bring a hedgehog and a bunny, occasionally bring a chinchilla. So it's quite an assortment.
So it's quite a menagerie
Oh, yeah.
that you're on the road.
Oh, yeah, a traveling zoo.
A traveling zoo. That sounds fun. No monkeys.
No monkeys, no. That's not something I would ever want as a pet.
And you're out on the road pretty regularly.
Well, I definitely have busy times and slow times. This is actually my slow time where I might do maybe 5 or 6 shows a week.
Really?
On a slow week. Summer might be 12 or 15 a week. Weekends I often do 5 or 6 parties. So it does vary though from time to time.
And they're very popular with children's parties, probably.
Yeah, I do a lot of birthday parties. It's actually this past year I did 2 adult birthday parties with the animals, which was a lot of fun for me. The adults had as much fun as kids do. Laughing,
there is
giggling.
such an interest in animals.
Yeah.
Wherever you look on the internet, people are writing about pets, and they're looking for news about animals.
Oh, yeah.
And look at this. This is a show that has, I thought we'd last for I thought in the beginning, we've done this now, this is our 33rd year, our 33rd show rather, and it's going into our 2nd year. I said, this will fly in a couple of weeks, and it hasn't.
People love pets. and when I do parties, if the adults get involved along with the kids, to me, it makes it even more fun when you've got everybody interacting with the animals. I actually have had shows where I had to say something to the adults because they were hogging the animals and the kids were not getting to hold them. So, I mean, adults enjoy it too.
They want to learn about animals.
Yeah.
There's such a great interest. Are you going to write any more books?
I'm actually working on one now. My first 3 books were all, I had to get an illustrator to illustrate them. I've done photos of my animals for the 4th book. So I've got all the photos. Now it's just a matter of doing writing the text of the book and then putting it all together. So I hope by the spring I'll have the 4th book out.
Any hint as to what the topic might be?
Yeah, it's actually, I had a turtle a couple years ago that laid eggs. So when the eggs hatched, I had some very, quarter-sized baby turtles, and I had the eggshells. So it occurred to me, what about a story where the turtle hatches, and he comes out of the hole in the ground, and he goes in the wrong direction. Instead of going to the pond, he ends up wandering the other way and encountering all these animals. So I have pictures of this little tiny turtle with all sorts of animals, and then it'll be him worrying whether the animal's going to hurt him. The animal may be telling him a little something about his diet or something like that, so it's educational for the kids. And then he'll eventually find his way back to the pond.
Sounds like a fascinating story, and I'm sure that it will be a bestseller. What else would you like to share with us?
Well,
we still have a couple of minutes.
Well, I mean, I
like. How do people learn more about your events?
Well, they certainly can check out my website,
which is
bestanimalexperiencesbydave.com. A lot of times, if they just Google Dave or Dave and Animal Experiences, it'll come up. But I mean, I love doing shows. I love traveling around, meeting different people. I mean, a lot of my shows are repeat shows. I did a show last weekend where it was the 6th time I'd been to that house. So I've done that child plus a couple of siblings as well. So, I mean, if the kids like the animals, it doesn't matter how old they are, you can go back year after year and they have a blast. So they know all the animals by name.
But there's always something new.
Oh, yeah. I'd say in every year there's certainly 2 to 3 new animals each year. Yeah, so there's always something new for them.
Any topics that are really, grab people's attention? They like turtles.
They like to, when I do a program, so it's not just showing the animals. The kids are learning about the animals, so I want them not to fear the animals, and I want them to respect the animals. And then I give them little basics about the care, and a lot of times when I'm doing the programs, if I go to a school and do 4 programs in a row, I'm actually giving a little bit different information at each program, because for me it's more interesting to vary the topics a little bit. So,
and I'm sure that the kids they have questions, and
there's a lot of give and take.
A lot of give and take.
Amazing, the really intelligent questions you get from kids that you wouldn't expect. Young kids that you don't think would be asking such really pointed questions sometimes. Yeah.
So there is continued interest, a lot of interest.
Absolutely.
And we will have you back.
Great. I'd love to.
It was a pleasure today to have Dave Marchetti and Animal Experiences, and he will be back because I'm sure there's going to be other creatures, and as we learn about other animals, Dave will be able to come back and share his wealth of information with us. Thank you, and have a good, if I don't see people for Thanksgiving, have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.